Welcome back to the Mindset Mastery podcast. This podcast was started with the sole intention of bringing on board guests who are doing incredibly well in the trading and investing industry. So I could bring them on board and ask them probing questions and extract insights on their routines, their processes, their mindset. So I can pass those on to you guys and girls out there, and you can take those things and implement them into your own trading and investing game to help you excel and go to the next level. Now, there's a lot of misinformation in this industry, so I wanted to bring on board the right guests and ask them the right questions to get that information, the right information that you need to succeed into your hands. So I hope you enjoy this particular interview. And if you did, make sure you subscribe and turn that notification bell on. Send it to other people in your network that you know will get a lot of value from this. And be sure to check out the description where I have more information on the guest and more information on my mindset trading services to help you guys go to the next level. Welcome back, guys. And in today's podcast, I have a very great friend and an incredible trader, Michael Bamber. And I'm incredibly excited to have brought Bamber on board because we're going to be discussing a lot of key things that it's essential to know as a trader to really help you create a strategy that's congruent with your personality, with yourself, and really succeed in the market. We're also going to be touching on funding, and Bam is going to give his thoughts on and tips and tricks on how to get funded and how to maintain and continue to scale that funding as well. So I'm incredibly excited to dive into this interview and welcome Bamber first and foremost. It'd be great if you give the audience a little bit of an introduction about yourself. It'd be a perfect place to start.
Thank you, and thank you for the introduction as well. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Bamber. I'm a Forex trader. I've been trading the markets for maybe 4 or 5 years now. So it's definitely been a long journey, plenty of ups and downs, ebbs and flows, you name it, I've been through it, which is the good thing about this podcast. We can dig into a few of those things later on, which is going to be really good. But yeah, when I started out trading, I was trading patterns, structure, things like that. Then went into things like price action, and now just combination of kind of both, plus my own experience, plus different things that I've acquired from different people, to be honest. So it's been a fascinating journey, and I can't wait to dig into it today.
Awesome, man. Well, it's great to have you on board. Now, let's start off there with the strategy creation, because I know there will be a lot of people in the audience right now who are maybe in that stage of learning a lot of different things and maybe learning from different educators. They maybe have their own stuff they may be teaching themselves. I know you've been through the process of creating, refining, and trading successfully a few different strategies. So I'd love to hear your thoughts first and foremost on what specifically are the processes and routines, and how do you structure your day and your processes and routines to create a successful strategy? What does that look like for you?
It's a very good question. I think in regards to the strategy stuff, I think there's a big misconception with the fact that, there's a specific process for every single thing that I put in place. There's not. There's a rough process, and we can get into that as well. But what I've learned throughout this journey, my life journey so far, is that things will figure themselves out. As you go along your journey and you start to progress in certain ways, when you're ready for something to come into your life, it will come. So, for example, like early this year, I was working on some technical stuff, and I honestly didn't know what my next step was. But then, funnily enough, someone reached out on Instagram, dropped me a couple of content pieces, a PDF. Funnily enough, I got a key tweak out of that PDF that was like next level stuff. So it's funny how things just come into your radar screen once you're ready for that. But until you're ready, until you open yourself up for that, it's never going to come. So there is no set process, but it's just been figuring things out along the way based on how it feels, gut feeling. Does it make sense? Is it logical? Yes or no? Go with that.
Okay. So let's break that down a little bit more, because I think that's incredibly insightful. So are you then having a look at what's out there and what you're aware of, and having a look at how that suits your personality, how that fits with you? Because I think there'll be a lot of people out there who are trying to force things and trying to do things because they want to start making money now or quickly. How important do you think that process is of finding something that's congruent with you as opposed to forcing things?
Very important. Very important. And obviously a very fine line between, digging into multiple courses from different people and sticking to one. I'm a firm believer in that. You should build your foundation. You should stick to one style, at least for, a good foundation of your journey before you even start experimenting with anything else. There's so many different ways to trade, but you can get so engrossed in patterns, support resistance. There's so many different styles out there. So best thing I say to beginners is stick with one style. If you want to tweak after that and it doesn't fully fit your personality, then that's entirely up to you. But I think you have to kind of settle with one for a foundation first and foremost, which is what I did, which is what you did. And we just kind of built off that from the ground up, it's just laying the foundation. If you build a house on quicksand, it's going to fall. If you build a house on strong bricks, it's gonna climb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love to promote, start with what you know and let that grow. So I know you're saying there's no, set foundation, but you would also promote the fact that you want to go off and learn one particular style, something that sort of resonates with you, develop that, build a trading plan around that, start trading that, and then it will over time develop and you'll find new ways, you'll find new ideas and new things that you can then add into that. Is that sort of the approach you promote?
Exactly. I don't like using the word settle, but get to grips with one style, make it work, get consistent with it, do really well with it, and then you can move on if you choose to. There's nothing wrong with sticking with that style. If you want to stick with that style and that's the perfect style for you, credit to you. Like that's the best thing you can do. But if it's not fully congruent or you think you want to experiment with other things, feel free to do that. Just you've got to be careful of not switching things up too much. But at the same time, there's a fine line between switching things up with logic and switching things up based on randomized just system of trying to figure stuff out. So it is a balance. Everything within trading is a balance.
100%. Because to be fair, a lot of strategies do work if you execute on them in a long enough period of time. It's us that, go looking for the next shiny ball that stops us from ever letting that edge play out. So giving yourself also enough time to let that strategy play out, like you mentioned. Okay. 100%. So this sort of ties into the next question. It seems like, it can be slightly contradictory because sometimes you get to a point where you've traded a strategy for long enough, but you now know it's time to move on and you now know it's time to find something new. And I know you've been, just like myself, I know you've been in this situation where it's time to find something new, it's time to make additions. First and foremost, how do you know it's time to adapt? And then also, how do you go in there and adapt safely and successfully to ensure that you can still manage capital on during the adaptation period?
It's a great question. It comes on feeling there isn't a right time or a wrong time to do something. It's based on how you feel in that moment. Is it logical to do so? When we were doing it, it was the logical thing to do. I'd been trading a certain style for 3 years. It was a fantastic foundation built upon risk management, technical skill, higher time frames to lower time frames. Everything I could think of was presented in that foundation. So it was a great thing to build off. Mm-hmm. But for me, it just came to a point where I felt like I almost hit a plateau for a while. And I felt like I needed to go in search of the next step, the next level, something after that. And it wasn't shiny ball syndrome. There's a very different thing between shiny ball syndrome, jumping from system to system, trying to find that holy grail of trading strategies that's going to make you successful. It's not about that. Mine was a systemized, okay, I've learned enough from here now. Move on, try and find something else to learn from and just build off that. Essentially what you're doing is, it's like, I don't know how you call it in Australia, but in the UK, you have primary school, secondary school, college, uni. It's the same thing. Primary school, then you elevate. Secondary school, it's just building on layers. But here's what people get wrong though. They go to primary school and then they're almost like redoing primary school 5-6 times because they're jumping from system to system, trying to make it work, forgetting every single thing they've learned. It's just mental to me. You've got to build off the foundation instead of build a foundation and cutting it off. So it's a very, very different thing.
That's a powerful analogy as well. And it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, okay. It just came to me in the moment.
That's good. Now, this podcast is the Trading Mindset podcast. So thank you for sharing some insights on strategy creation. But I'd be keen to hear also, Bamber, about the bigger or the biggest mindset or psychological challenge you faced in your trading, either previously or recently. And I guess what sort of things you've done to overcome and mitigate the challenge in that to get back and bounce back.
There's been a few things. Let's put it that way. Throughout the past 4 or 5 years, of the trading journey, there's been a lot of different things. We can make an entirely different podcast episode just on that, to be honest. But if I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, I think the biggest thing, especially early on, I had to deal with was, and this was a pleasure, by the way, this wasn't like a challenge. It had its hard times, it had its good times, but the sacrifices, because whether you want to believe it or not, to be successful, you have to make sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
Your life is probably not going to be balanced, at least to a point where you're later on working on different things. But in the early stages, you're going to be probably out of balance. You're learning stuff, you're putting the hard work in, things aren't always going to be in balance. So I had to make sacrifices. I was 19 at the time coming into the markets, had to sacrifice. I didn't have to, but I wanted to get to where I wanted to be. But, social life, relationships, not so much friendships, but I had to surround myself with people on the same frequency, on the same mindset of where I wanted to become.
Mm-hmm.
The late nights of working on the weekends when other people are out partying and stuff, just dedicating your whole energy in your life to this. That's what I've had to do. And I think people don't get to grips with that. Sometimes you say sacrifice and it's just a cliche, typical term now. But if I could really, showcase that in a video, I would, but I can't. I literally can't. I couldn't even speak about it now. Like the amount of stuff you have to go through, most people just wouldn't go through, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'll be the first thing. I think, the second thing, once again, just reiterating late nights, early mornings. This is for years, consistent years. This is for 4 years, getting up every day, putting the work in, setting the daily goals, smashing them, and just progressing every single day. But it's hard. You're going to have easy days where you just flow with it, and you're going to have very tough days when you've got pressure from family, friends, yourself, money pressure, financial pressure. There's a time when I quit my job and I hardly had anything. I had a part-time income and stuff, but I just really wanted to put my whole energy into leveling myself up trading.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't easy. That was not easy. So there's been a lot of pressure situations that I've had to go through, and it's, a diamond starts off as a rock, but eventually it chisels into a diamond. So it's the stuff that makes you what you have to go through.
Mm-hmm. The necessary things you go through, right? And at least one thing I've observed as well, because there's been sacrifices in my I guess life as well to focus on what I would love to focus, that those relationships tend to respawn in what you pursue. So you may lose relationships outside, but when you get into trading, you create new relationships, right? Lucky for you, you got to meet this guy from Australia, Bamber, called Pat. So you lost one of your friends, and you manifested me into your life. Unfortunately for you, but I feel like that's pretty key. Like we make sacrifices, but it's also important to recognize that nothing's missing at the end of the day. We're going to have new relationships, we're going to have new friendships that are born as well, which is really, really powerful. But I love those insights. Is there any other mindset challenges that you would love to share or shed some insights on?
For sure. I think going back to the present time, so now, I won't say it's a challenge once again. There's been many challenges, but I'm just going off the top of my head here.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm working on right now is self-image, building my self-image up, because you can get your technicals to a certain level and you can have the best technicals on the planet, but unless you've got your self-image intact, unless you're working on your psychology, there's still going to be barriers there that you can limit yourself on. So for me right now, it's just get my mind fully, habitual to winning. Every time I'm in a winning trade, just reiterate the fact that I'm winning consistently. I'm in a winning trade. All these powerful reaffirmations that I'm doing. It's, it sounds cliche to say affirmations because a lot of people don't resonate with them, which is fine, but it works. It works for a reason. Repetition on your subconscious mind. The more you repeat something, positive or negative, is gonna, go into your life. So if you start reaffirming negative stuff, it's gonna materialize in the real world. Same thing with the positive stuff. So for me, it's just about not so much removing the negative stuff, but building the positive stuff up, essentially. Creating that winning mindset over and over and over again until it's like me to be winning all the time.
Awesome, man. That's really great. Now, you set a goal, you set an intention, right? You've been funded, which we're going to talk about in a second, but I'm sure you have goals beyond that as well. There are other goals in your life, whether more funding accounts or maintaining that or doing things with your fund as well. But you also have things like, you got your YouTube, you've got other things, you've got things you do outside of your trading as well. I'd be keen to hear a little bit about your processes, your routines. What does a day in a life look like for you? How do you maintain energies in all those areas and continue to build momentum in all those areas?
It's a great question. I think having your focus on a key area is important. I wouldn't want to, I think I'm the type of person to be able to do this, but alongside trading it is very difficult. So I have the majority of my energy and focus into trading. I think that's important. If it was 50-50 balance between YouTube and trading, I think it'd be more of a struggle, to be honest. I need to focus on my trading for that to excel. Because in order for something to grow, you have to put your energy and focus and heart into that. So majority of my time goes into trading. This is more so, not so much technical work anymore, because I feel like I've gone to the end of that phase now. And I've more so focused on psychology, you know, tracking my daily performance, tracking my own trades, just in more detail than I did before. So that's my focus, and that takes majority of my time and priority, to be honest. But alongside YouTube, it just comes in the form of just planning my day ahead of time. The night before I get into the day, I'll sit down. You know, I've got a journal here, funnily enough. I just track everything. Daily goals in there. I actually wrap my schedule in there now as well. You know, like a rough schedule of what I'm going to do per time. But the thing is with this, you have to be flexible as well. When you're trading the markets, you can't have a rigid schedule and be like, cool, 12 p.m. I'm going to hit the gym, or 12 p.m. I'm going to do this or film this video. You have to be flexible. If a trade lines up at 11:55 and I want to start working on something at 12, it ain't going to happen. Like, you've got to be flexible and be able to adapt. So if the markets are quite active for that day, cool, okay, just flow with it. Pay attention to the markets, execute any trades you need to, manage the trades that you need to. That should be the focus. But then on days that are quiet, I might do something like film a YouTube video. Like the other day, I think it was sometime last week, the markets were a little bit quiet for that day. I'd finished London, there wasn't too much for the day going on. Price was quite corrective on the higher time frames and the lower time frames. And I just thought, cool, okay, I'm going to film a YouTube video. Went to the coffee shop, filmed some B-roll, and then just kicked off a video from then. But it's just literally just flowing with the day, to be honest. But having that crucial basic plan ahead of time is key, because I get to the end of that day, and if I'm not ticked off a daily goal, it can be a little bit frustrating. So I just make sure that I tick off and smash the goals, because it's just a momentum cycle. If you can tick off 3, 4, 5 daily goals and repeat that daily over the course of a week, a month, a year, you just start to believe in yourself more and more and more. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's such a positive momentum cycle to get into. So that's how I process my day, really.
So it's about identifying the priorities and structuring those and executing on those, but not being too rigid with it, still having that level of flexibility, understanding what you're going to prioritize and just going with that. Now, you mentioned that there are some processes you do with your trading. I'd be pretty keen to dial in and zoom in on maybe 1 or 2 of the processes right now that you're finding gives you a really great return on investment, whether it be some form of review of your trades or some sort of back testing. What would you say right now that you're doing is giving you a really great return on your investment, giving you some great insights into your trading that would be valuable for the audience?
I like to approach trading in different phases. You have like a technical phase and you have a psychology phase. Essentially, if you've heard of the theory from the mental game of poker, it's the intro theory, where you work on the A game and then your C game is going to be lagging behind. So it's important to bring them up simultaneously to just continue progressing. So that's the way I approach trading. So right now I'm focused on tracking daily performance, ASR, journaling. That's really the process I'm really focused on right now, because I know that in order to get to that next level, I need to fundamentally improve my performance. In order to do that, I need to track the trades, screenshots before and after, emotions at the time of trade. Was there any self-talk? Did I follow my process, my mental program? Everything in place to perform really well, and then everything else will take care of itself. And then what you'll notice through that is that you'll get positive and negative patterns in there. I could notice a thing that, okay, I've taken 3 losses over the course of 3 weeks on this specific pattern or trade or wherever it is. Maybe I should pay more attention to that and just monitor that for the next couple of weeks. If it continues, maybe just abolish that for now. Same with the winning thing. If something is working, double down on it. 80-20 principle. Double down that 20% that is equating to 80% of the results. So I'd say ASR, definitely the biggest thing now. I've just upgraded the software and I'm just trying to approach it from the most professional aspect I can to get my trading to the next level.
So when you go in there in ASR, you're measuring your actions based on your processes. So you're going in there and you're seeing, am I executing on the processes I've set? Am I executing according to my plan? and you're pretty much measuring yourself and tracking yourself against what you know your edge is, your processes, right?
100%. Because I've tested my plan. I know my plan works. I've been spending 6 months refining my trading to get to this level now. I know it works. I know it's tested. I know it's, live tested over the course of 6 months, plus previous data that I've gone into last year as well. And I know it works. So at this point, it's just about focus on the process, because if you can master the process, then the outcome will come. The thing is about trading, it's not about the individual trade. You can't attach your ego to one trade and say, this trade must be a winner or this trade must be a loser. And if it's a loser, I'm going to beat myself up, and it's a winner, then I'm going to be euphoric and, in that high elevated state of mind. It doesn't work like that. It's not based on individual trades. It's over the course of a series of trades, a sequence of trades. So it's the same thing. It's the same way a casino works. It's over the course of plays, trades, same thing with trading. So I just try and associate with that and focus more on the process, because the outcome will take care of itself.
Awesome, man. Super insightful. So you're measuring your ASO is measuring yourself to stick yourself to your processes, to execute on what you know is the edges at the end of the day. Love that. Okay.
I track myself based on that process.
Tracking
That's how I measure my performance.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people out there, Bamber, who are comparing themselves to others, and they're going on social media and looking, did this person take that trade? Did this person take that trade? Where I think what people really need to draw from what you said there is, it's much wiser to compare your daily actions to your processes and your goals versus comparing your daily actions to someone else, what they did on that daily action. So tracking yourself based on your edge and tracking yourself based on your process, super key, super key.
100%. Stay in your own lane.
Yep. Now you made a couple YouTube videos on your funding and stuff, but I'd really love to draw some extracts or some insights from you now to put on this podcast about going and getting funded. A lot of traders have the goal of getting funded. Obviously, you're funded, and I would love to hear from you. If a trader was to come up to you and ask, Bamber, what are your top 3 tips for getting funded? What would they be?
It's a good question. I would solely focus on, this is the most important thing. Don't focus on getting funded. Funding and passing a challenge should not be the main focus. So I would say don't focus on the funding process. You shouldn't come into the markets and be trading for 3 months and then be trying to force a challenge, or I'm going to try and pass this, or if I pass it, cool, it's a bonus. It shouldn't be the mindset. It should be get the groundwork in, become a consistent, profitable trader. The challenges will take care of themselves. It was a little bit more difficult for me because I was evolving as I was going through the process, which added the extra pressure, and we can get into that a bit as well. But it was very difficult, because as I was trading one style, another was starting to come in, and I was starting to learn more stuff, but I still had that strategy in place to produce results, right? So that was always kind of ticking away in the background. But for people, I'd say don't focus on getting funded, get the skill, become the asset. The funding will take care of itself. Next thing I'll say, risk management, a topic that most people don't want to hear, because they want to come into the markets, they see an ad on Instagram that's someone promoting a Lambo. They start typing in a Google search 5 minutes down the line, nearest Lamborghini dealership. They think they're going to be rich in 3 months. It doesn't work like that. Risk management is key. You need to stick to a specific risk management, whether it's 1%, 0.5, 2%, 3%. But the more you risk capital, especially in the early stages, it can come back and bite you. If you're risking 1% capital per trade, you have a lot more of a buffer than when you are risking 3%. If you mess up and you're trading 3% capital and you take 4 losses in a row, or 3 losses in a row, tell me how you're going to get out of that pressure wise if you just come into the market and say you're trading 10K or 20K or whatever it may be. It can be quite difficult emotionally, especially if you've not done the inner self work at that point to be able to customize yourself to that process. So risk management is another vital aspect of this. And then, like I said, just take your time. Funding seems to be just this big hype now on social media, through YouTube, and obviously I've done the 6-figure series and stuff as well, but it's just a massive hype around FTMO and prop firms and stuff, which is fine, but don't get distracted from the main goal, which is to acquire capital. Don't get distracted from the fact that the goal, like I said before, should not be my goal is to pass the challenge or pass the verification. This should be a side effect, a byproduct of the things you've worked on, the foundation that you built, because otherwise it's very easy to get into the pendulum swing of prop firms and all this stuff. You just you're an effect. You're not, the law of cause and effect.
Yeah.
You are the effect. You're just being swung both ways. So you have to stand your ground, and you have to essentially see through that. So pendulums going from side to side, you've got prop firms and all this stuff. You've got to see through that to your goal. It's the most important thing.
And I guess that comes back to what you just mentioned before. The way you do that is by sticking to your processes, sticking to your plan. And then at the end of every week, measuring yourself, were my actions congruent with my plan, were my actions congruent with my processes. And that's what you're measuring yourself by, as opposed to, trying to hit that target or trying to meet the target or trying to get funded. It's a different mindset, but you give yourself permission to play the long game if you focus on your processes.
You do, because I've got to admit, I got caught up into this when I first did my first FTMO challenge. You see that target of 10%, and you're so focused on that 10%, it's so easy to get distracted from your processes.
Yep.
And then suddenly you're minus 2% down within the first, let's say, few days, and you've realized what you've done, and it's like so easy to get sucked into that. So it's important that you stand your ground, stay your process. It's the most important thing, but it's the hardest thing to do as well, because that 10% target is so obvious and it's right in front of your face. You just need to detach from it, because if not, it's very easy to, because you see where it's going to take you. You see the 10%, you're like, cool, I just need to pass the challenge, pass the verification, get access to 6 figures. And you start thinking about all these different things in the future. I could buy this and save up for this and invest in this and grow my portfolio. And that's a good thing to have in the back of your mind, but it shouldn't be the sole focus, because it can add pressure and it can take your distractions away from where you actually should be focused.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this, just you and I, on your YouTube video and all that type of stuff, where a lot of people have the funding up on a pedestal, and if they get funded, they're extremely elated. If they don't get funded, they're bloody extremely depressed. And like you mentioned, they're swung on the pendulum, where at the end of the day, if people just circle back and go back 7-8 minutes in this video and listen to what you said about sticking to your processes, sticking to your plan, mastering your strategy, and measuring yourself according to your processes. That is in a way, the holy grail to getting funded. Because if you have an edge, over time, you're going to hit that target eventually, and it's just about sticking with that. So I think that's an incredibly important insight to give there. So thanks for sharing that.
100%, no problem at all.
Now, what has been the biggest turning point in your journey? I'm really curious about this whole idea of transformation and turning points, because I think a lot of people think that it's just a straight linear path. You start trading, you learn, and then you get funded. But ultimately, a lot of the times it looks like setbacks, and then you have levels of turning points where you dig yourself out and go to a new level. So I'd be curious to hear if you've had any big turning points and sort of shed some insights on those.
There's been a few. Once again, so many different turning points. I won't be able to put my finger on, every single one of them, because you just forget and move on and grow. It's the staircase analogy. If you just up 2 levels, one back one, and you just keep going. But the one that comes to mind a few times is the whole 9-to-5 situation, because a lot of people don't realize the fact that was a financial sacrifice when I made that. I wasn't in the best position, but I just believed in myself. And that's what I wanted to say. You have to back yourself. And that's what I did. I just backed myself, believed in myself, even if no one else around me did, or very limited people did. And you just got to go with that. You got to go with the vision that you see for yourself, for your future. And you have to trust yourself. That's what I did. When I left that 9-to-5, it was uncertain. It was not the smart idea to do. Everyone said it was a bad idea. Same thing with dropping out of college too. Why are you doing this? It's not a smart idea. Get a safe, consistent future. But it just felt right. I'm big on feeling. I'm very connected with my intuition. So I know that if something feels right in the moment and it's backed by logic, likelihood is I'm going to take that step because I trust myself, I back myself, and I trust my ability to see through that, if that makes sense. So my 9-to-5 was one of the situations where it wasn't easy. Those first few months after I left as well, there was a lot of pressure on me, and I had a part-time job, don't get me wrong, but I was just literally just paying for expenses every month. There was pressure to earn money from trading, and that added a subconscious pressure too. Same transition from a part-time to then full-time self-employed, the exact same thing, just arguably more pressure, because at that point you've got no one else paying your bills for you. It's you. It's just literally you. It comes down to you, how you manage your money, how you manage your time. You've got responsibility now. You have to provide it for yourself. So it's tough. Same thing with, once again, so many different situations I can lodge it back for. Same thing with leaving the community stuff. The community gave me such a great foundation But when it was time to leave, I realized how hard it would be on my own. There's certain challenges that I didn't think I would face, but I did face, and it was tough, and it was, I would say, lonely, because I like my own company, to be honest, but it was a little bit lonely and difficult. And there was times where I never really wanted to give up, but you get those challenges, and you start to question your why, and you start to think of that bigger meaning behind certain stuff. So yeah, just different things like that. It's not been easy, but there's been times where everything's going to be worth it. Everything's already worth it to me because I love the process and I enjoy the journey. So
There's a slight bit of irony in there as well, because the biggest turning points now were the biggest challenges previously, right? It's almost like in the moment what you perceived as the biggest challenge I'm going through right now, moments later, looking back on it, you realize that was very much the necessary thing for me to do to get to where I am now. So it's almost like those challenges were exactly what you needed to get you to the next level. Like you talked about with that staircase analogy, right?
100%.
One step back to take this forward.
Above everything, you just have to back yourself. I remember the moment where I had it in my resignation. I was so nervous to do it. I have my resignation in my pocket. I'm like reaching out and my arm's shaking. But at the same time, regardless of that, I believed in myself. I knew it was the right choice. And yeah, such an emotional day, but I just believed in myself and I backed myself. And I'm so thankful for that. And that's what I carry through my entire life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If the younger you was listening to this, Bamber, to wrap up this sort of conversation, what single piece of advice would you give? Would it come back to that whole idea of backing yourself? What pops into your mind when you think about the younger Bambers there listening to this podcast and you want to advise him? What would that advice be to him?
To fully answer this question, I need a few hours just to sit down and just honestly just plan what I would say. But but to be honest, it would go back to the whole backing the self. In the whole society, we get people and situations and the media and stuff that just limit your thinking. They don't want you to know how powerful you are. You're so powerful as an individual. So it's important that you actually believe in yourself, back yourself in the whole potential you have, because every single person has the potential to be phenomenal, to be honest. It's just our habits that get involved, our beliefs, our lack of thinking we can do something, which all comes from programming, whether that's school, uni, the education system. That's a whole different rabbit hole in itself, as you know. But just certain limits crop up, and it's important to back yourself. And just essentially it comes down to the pendulums as well. As society, things just swing from side to side. You have to stay laser focused on yourself, where you want to be. Ignore the short-term gratifications, the short-term distractions, especially what's going on right now. It'd be so easy to get sucked into that pendulum. You have to stay focused, have to stay on track, and you have to, once again, back yourself.
It's a powerful way to end. So thank you so much for coming on board, Bamber, and shedding some amazing insights on your journey and some really great insights that I'm certain the audience will get a lot of value from. So on behalf of the audience, I'd love to thank you for coming on board. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, mate. I've really enjoyed this podcast. It's been a lot of fun.